Want to talk about more of the reaction here? Let's bring in Majority Leader of the House, Steve Scalise, joining us now live. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Of course. Well, first off, a big question for you. As you start to see the video coming out yesterday that shows that those drones, those missiles, are heading from Iran over to Israel, what's going through your mind?
Well, this is an escalation unprovoked by Iran. I mean, you've already had the fight by Iran's proxies. And let's make it clear, Hamas, Hezbollah are all funded by Iran. And so we know that Iran's been involved from the beginning in what happened on October 7th, just not directly. This is the first direct action from Iran to try to attack Israel. And Israel has a right to defend themselves. They always have. We've always stood by them in their right to self-defense. And in days like today, we've got to be right there with them. And we surely are on the House majority side.
What does this say to you as you're watching the video of the explosions, the Iron Dome intercepting some of these projectiles flying through? What does it say to you about the importance of funding for the Iron Dome?
Yeah, this is a partnership we've had with Israel for a long, long time. I've been out to Israel myself personally, seeing the Iron Dome and some of the other defense systems that we work with them on putting in place, and they've been highly effective. This was another example. It took the Iron Dome, it took some of the other weapon systems, of course, fighter jets, American and Israeli fighter jets, destroyers, American destroyers, helped shoot down some of these drones and missiles. And so this partnership has been in place for a long time, and it needs to continue, especially right now when you see a multi-front war. It's not just Hamas that Israel is fighting. Now you've got Iran directly involved. And however Israel responds to Iran's aggressive actions, we need to support it. The president doesn't need to be putting preconditions like you've seen lately on Israel. It's not Israel who started this. It was Hamas. It was Iran with Hamas. Now it's Iran directly.
Any surprise when you did see the countries that were involved in helping to protect Israel? You, of course, know the U.S., U.K., they're going to be involved. But as you start to see places like Jordan, for instance, what does that make you think?
Well, it shows that, if you go back to some of the peace accords that President Trump helped put in place, those peace accords are real. There are a lot of countries that want peace in the Middle East. Iran's the outlier. Iran is the country who provokes Israel on every front, who funds terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah. And so, when you saw those Abraham Accords, it was a lot of other countries, not just neighboring Israel, but other Middle Eastern countries who recognized that peace is in the best long-term interest of the entire Middle East. If Palestinians want their own country, the ability is there to have an agreement reached. They've chosen, the Palestinian leadership has chosen not to want peace. But everybody else in the region does, especially Israel. Countries like Jordan want it as well. And so that's what I think you're seeing right now. Iran is the one kind of sole outlier in that. And we need to isolate Iran. We ought to put increased sanctions on Iran. President Biden made it easier, for example, for Iran to sell their oil on world markets. That put over $60 billion of additional money in Iran's pockets since Biden became president. That money's been put to use to go and fund terrorist activity, for goodness sake. We need to increase those sanctions, put those sanctions back in place.
And it sounds as though the House is now going to take up the foreign aid bill next week. What is the likelihood of everything moving through the House successfully?
I'd like to see that happen. Speaker Johnson has been negotiating with the White House for some time now to try to get an agreement on the broad package that would include a number of other things. If you go back to the fall of last year, we passed an Israel aid package. It was paid for by an IRS slush fund, a slush fund where the IRS is trying to more than double the size of the agency. The Senate still hasn't taken that bill up. That bill has been sitting in the Senate for months and months now. Chuck Schumer refuses to take action. There was an attempt to pass a standalone Israel aid package just a few weeks ago, and the White House threatened to veto it. So that killed that bill. So you've seen the White House time and time again recently walk away from Israel. This is a time to stand with our ally Israel, to show them that we support them. These remarks by Chuck Schumer and others that they want to see a regime change in Israel, they need to be putting pressure on Hamas. It's Hamas who has over 130 hostages, including some Americans. It's Iran who's been funding Hamas. Iran's right in the middle of this. And now Iran has initiated direct attacks on Israel. It's time for the Democrat leadership in Washington to stand up against the real enemy, and that is Iran and their terrorist proxies.
And kind of piggybacking off of that there, you've previously said that $6 billion for Iran meant $6 billion for Hamas. I imagine as all of this is going on here, you probably stand pretty strongly by that, maybe possibly more so than ever before.
Yeah, and if anybody wondered just how closely Iran is tied with these terrorist organizations like Hamas, the actions of yesterday make that crystal clear. There is no difference. If you are giving money to Iran, and again, President Biden eased sanctions against Iran so that they could do things like sell more of their oil on world markets. That's not only putting billions, tens of billions of dollars in the pockets of Iran, but it's giving Iran direct money to go fund more terrorist activity against countries like Israel and the United States. You know, they hate Israel and they hate the United States. Why, for goodness sake, would you want to give them more money? Billions of dollars, 60 billion by most accounts since Biden took office. That's why we want to see increased sanctions against Iran, punish them for the activities that they've been playing both indirectly and now directly against our ally Israel.
We have started to receive reports here that Biden is telling Netanyahu not to retaliate against Iran after this attack. So my question for you is, what is Israel's next move here?
Well, first of all, what is President Biden doing trying to dictate the terms of Israel's response to a direct attack against their country? Could you imagine if a nation was trying to attack the United States and you had an ally, a friend of ours, calling saying, hey, don't respond? That would be ludicrous. And by the way, that idea would be thrown in the trash can because we should respond if somebody attacked us, just like Israel has the right to respond to these attacks. You don't want them to go unresponded to because that's the new standard. If it is, well, Iran can just shoot drones, missiles, other weapons at Israel, and they should just turn the other cheek at some point in time. There's going to be more deaths and casualties. That's not something that we want to be a part of. We want to support Israel in their right to self-defense. We surely do on the House Republican side. It's time the Democrat Party start facing this anti-Semitic wing that is starting to take over their party. It's disturbing. It's alarming. I think a lot of people are real angry with the direction of the Democrat Party moving away from Israel. This isn't the time you walk away from your friends. This is the time when they're being attacked by evil countries, terrorists, organizations. You stand by your friends and you have their back when they defend themselves.
Iran is now warning the U.S. not to aid Israel, not to get involved in any of this, or that U.S. bases could be targeted. Does the U.S. take that threat seriously in any way?
Well, first of all, Iran is not an ally of the United States. They're an enemy of our friends. They want to do us harm too. And so, at the end of the day, you got to stand with your friends, and your friends under attack. If they're a true ally, you stand with your allies. And that's what's happening right now. Israel is under attack. Israel's at war. The ceasefire, as Biden loves to keep talking about, that ceasefire ended on October 7th when Hamas went into Israel, brutally attacking, murdering innocent civilians in Israel. And so they're at war, and they've made it clear that it's not just the Netanyahu administration. Even the opposition leadership in Israel is united with the Netanyahu administration that they want to eviscerate Hamas. If you want to get peace in the Middle East, you have to eviscerate the terrorists who are the only thing standing in the way of peace. And that's what's going on right now. We need to support Israel.
My last question here before I let you go. Trump, now, of course, the Republican frontrunner for president, has said that if he was president, this wouldn't be happening. And I want to get your take. Do you agree with that statement from the former president?
I do. Just go look at the track record. When Donald Trump was president, you had some aggression in other parts of the world prior to his administration. You look at what's happening in Ukraine. You had, during the Obama years, Russia, Putin moving in on Ukraine back then. Trump comes in, and Trump started providing the lethal aid that they were asking for in Ukraine, and it pushed back Putin. Putin stopped until Biden came in. And then weakness, you're seeing it all over the world. Iran has seen the weakness of Joe Biden's administration. Putin has surely seen and taken advantage of the weakness. Xi in China is taking advantage of that weakness. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. The withdrawal in Afghanistan was not only an incredibly low point in U.S. military operations. 13 service members lost their lives. The total debacle under President Biden, nobody was held accountable. But our enemies saw that failure and saw the weakness that Joe Biden portrays on the world stage, and they're taking advantage of it. Donald Trump does not allow that kind of weakness to be shown. He didn't start any new wars. A lot of people were surprised with that, but he used the strength of America and the moral strength of America to stand up to the bullies around the world. There are bad actors out there. If there weren't, nobody would need any defense systems. But there are bad actors who are always ready to take advantage of weakness. President Trump showed strength, and because of that, the world was a safer place. We need to get back to that. We need President Trump back in office.
All right, Steve Scalise, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help discuss the Middle East, break it all down. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Again, we just need to stand with our friend and our ally Israel during these tough, difficult times. And, they know what they need to do to secure their nation. We don't need to be standing in the way of an ally, a democracy in the Middle East when you have terrorist organizations and countries like Iran who sponsor those terrorist organizations that are trying to eviscerate our friend and ally Israel.
All right. Thank you again for taking the time to be here with us today. We appreciate it.
Great being with you, Josh. Thanks for having me.